So good morning, I hope you're doing well. What you see here behind me is the 2025 Honda NC750X. And I believe it's the best daily motorcycle you can buy right now. So to find out, I've been riding this thing over the past week, done over 500 kilometers. And in this video I'm going to explain to you all the reasons why I believe that if you are commuting, this is probably the motorcycle you should buy. So for now, let's hop on, go for a ride, and I'll tell you all about it.
So to start us off with all the practical stuff, how is it on the highway? To be honest, I didn't expect it to be amazingly capable on the highway because it's not the biggest, it's pretty light and it's not the most premium machines, you know, it's quite affordable. But I am pleased to say, this thing is surprisingly capable on the highway. The comfort is actually really nice for a mid-sized bike. I could do with a little bit more leg room, but that's me on every motorcycle because I'm a lanky bugger. But this Monday I had to do some meetings and visit a friend and all that stuff. And I spent 200 kilometers in one day on the bike, which here in the Netherlands is quite a lot because the entire country is like 200 kilometers long. And I was really comfortable actually. You got decent wind protection, the screen adjusts up and down. So yeah, the wind, if you got it in a lower position, there's quite a bit of turbulence, but of course that's to be expected. If you put it in the upper position, it does a reasonable job keeping the wind off of my chest and my head. Again, I am pretty tall, I'm 6'1", 185 centimeters. So if you are going to be a little bit shorter than that, I think you'll be more comfortable and sit more out of the wind. And as you can see, because of the DCT transmission, you don't have to shift down yourself when you want to do an overtake. The engine is decently torquey, and this combination makes it so overtaking is always pretty effortless. It's a really solid highway bike, which does bring me to the first actual downside, I would say, of this bike, which is this bike does not have cruise control. And it's a criticism I've had before on Honda bikes. So with the CB1000 Hornet, it wasn't an option. I think on the X80V I rode last year, it wasn't an option. And especially on a bike like this, where you are going to be using it mainly for commuting, so either on the highway or in the city. Cruise control is just so crucial. To give an example, a friend of mine who owns a Tracer 900, he pretty much uses his bike only for commuting. And what he does is, he rides out of his street, he takes 2 turns, turns onto the highway, sits on the highway for an hour. In a use case like that, cruise control would actually be a deal breaker for me, you know, because you just sit there for an hour with your wrist on the throttle, and this has to be a fly-by-wire bike. I mean, look at the switchgear, it's quite big, and you have the riding modes. So I'm 99% sure this bike is ride-by-wire, and that means to me there's no real excuse to not include cruise control. But yeah, that's the first of only 2 real downsides, I would say. Now we're going into town. Well, to be honest, because I do YouTube as my job now, I don't really have a commute, so to say. So I'm just going to go into town, across town to one of my favorite coffee stops to test how it is in the city, or to show you how it is in the city. And spoiler alert, it's pretty excellent. You can basically just tell that this is exactly what this bike is made for. Because you have that really low center of gravity, because the engine sits so low, it's really well balanced, and it's so easy to ride at low speeds like this, where you're just weaving between traffic, and when you have to ride really slowly and keep your balance, you can just tell that it's exactly what this bike is made for. The DCT the dual clutch transmission calibration, to give you a technical term, it's not perfect. I think the Goldwing was a little bit more smooth, but that might also just be due to the engine characteristics. But yeah, sometimes it's just a little bit hard to predict what the clutch is, when the clutch is going to engage or disengage, and sometimes the gear shifts don't work out in a great way when you're taking a corner. But overall it's pretty good, to be honest. And if you're just going to be using this bike for commuting, I would definitely pick this option. It's a 1,000 euro option, but I think it makes this bike, because if you are just going to be viewing this as a practical vehicle, it makes perfect sense to have an automatic transmission, because it's just more convenient, just takes less work. So overall, I'm always a big fan of the DCT transmission or automatic transmissions in general, especially on practical motorcycles or practical vehicles, and that's no different on this one. So I can show you this adjustable windscreen now. Takes two hands, push in the tabs, and then you can pull it down or push it up. And then in town it's nice to put it down so you get some more airflow into your helmet and stay cool a little bit more. Another great thing about this bike is the fuel economy. So at first I wasn't that impressed, because I think the guy who rode it before me really spanked the bike. It said I was doing 10 kilometers per liter, which is abysmal, especially considering the type of bike that this is. But now that I've been riding it myself over the last week, did about 500 kilometers. And the average has been pretty solid. It's been around 26 kilometers per liter. And I'll show you the conversions of that on screen now in your local unit of measurement. But yeah, another great plus if you're just going to be using this bike for the commuting, because you're going to save a ton of money on fuel. And to be honest, fuel in Holland these days is really freaking expensive, so that's really nice. So in a second, when this light turns green, I'll show you another advantage of the DCT. When it turns green, you just twist and go, just like a scooter, you know. And it's just really nice that you're always the first to leave the traffic light. With a bike, of course, you always want to put the maximum amount of distance between you and all the other road users, create like a safety buffer around you, and just getting through the front of the traffic lights, and then just being able to leave first is really nice. Of course, most motorcycles you're going to be first, but you want to be in the right gear, and then you have to hold in the clutch and you have to release it in time, so you're really paying attention. And with the DCT, you just, oh, the light's green, and then you just give it some throttle and you're off. And I can't overemphasize how easy this thing is to ride. It's just so well balanced. The seat height is quite low, so although that is a downside for the legroom, that's really nice for ground accessibility. And overall it's just very friendly. The engine has a nice amount of torque. The throttle response is pretty smooth. When it's cold it could be a little bit better. It can be a bit jerky when you're just first off riding when it's still cold. But generally it's really good. And then the brakes aren't too sharp. I mean, they're capable, but they're easy to modulate. To give you some more terms. Back brake could be a little bit stronger, but you know, it's okay. Only downside with the DCT around town, when you have a normal clutch, it's really easy to calculate your low speed maneuvers, you know, like you're in control fully. And although this thing is really easy to ride, really well balanced, sometimes you're not always 100% certain where the clutch is going to engage and disengage. And when you're doing, for example, a really tight U-turn, it can be a bit, just unpredictable. You can get around this by holding just a tiny amount of throttle and then using the back brake to modulate your speed. So you definitely get used to it, and it's not that big a deal because, again, the bike is so easy to ride. But that is one of the things where if you do have just a normal clutch, might come in handy. Oh yeah, and this thing you see here in front of me right now, this is like the Dutch version of K cars. So they are really small, mostly electric cars. And you can drive them with a scooter license. So they're really popular to get around town here. Pretty sure road tax and insurance like that, all of that stuff is really affordable as well. So when you go into like the business district of Amsterdam, you see the entire street parked full of those things, because the business people, they don't want to be out in the rain, but they don't want to pay like 200 euros a day for parking here in Amsterdam. So that's why they're really common here, probably going to see a lot of them. And we're actually going to ride past my old school. Used to do this ride 4 or 5 times a week when I was still a young one. And in case you are interested, I used to study web development, web design. Obviously not the thing I'm using for my career right now. But it was still a good time. Look at that. Another NC750. Dezelfde! 25. Hij is nieuw. Lekker man. Goeie motor toch? He enjoys it. So he told me that's the 2015 model. It's not that different, to be honest. I mean, the styling has gotten a lot sharper, but I think if you're going to be looking at one of these bikes, used could be the used value could be really good. I do know that these hold their value pretty well. Heb je hem al lang? Oh, oké, dat valt nog best mee. Blij mee? Ja. Ah, there he goes. Try to make a conversation, but that's always hard when you're at the traffic light. So yeah, nice little showcase of Amsterdam city center, in case you were interested. Honestly, not my favorite place. Way too touristy. But my opinion might also just be biased towards the negative a little bit, because I've been coming here all my life, and at a certain point I do think you become blind to the beauty of places and things. So maybe it's just because I've been here so much that I only see the bad parts and the touristy parts, and I don't see the beauty anymore. But yeah, come for yourself and decide for yourself, I'd say. Oh yeah, this might be fun to show. This is the Amsterdam Centraal, so the central station. So if you do visit the city and you come here by train, this is the first place you're gonna see. Pretty much all of that stuff is now closed to normal traffic. You used to be able to go by there in both directions. I suppose that's better because there's a lot of foot traffic and you don't want tons of cars and motorcycles and taxis to go through there. So I understand, but it would have been nice to be able to show you a little bit closer. But maybe another day. Alright, so we are here. My favorite coffee stop in Amsterdam, which is actually an Italian wholesale place, but they serve really good coffee. And it allows me to demonstrate one of the key advantages of the NC, which is of course the fact that it has a trunk. So we're gonna do some shopping, get some coffee, and I'll show you that practicality. I will see you in a moment. You're just gonna leave you right there. Alright, so here's what I got. Favorite cookies, can of tuna, can of tomato sauce, and favorite iced tea. And as you can see, so easy to just chuck everything in there and it just fits. So yeah, that is one of the standout features of this NC. So the only reason I'm wearing a backpack right now is because my camera tripod doesn't fit in the trunk. But yeah, if you're just riding to work or you're doing some shopping, it's just so absolutely amazing that you don't have to wear a backpack all the time. Because I remember when I used to commute 5-6 times a day into Amsterdam for school and for work, one of the most annoying things is having to carry around a backpack with a heavy disc lock and a laptop and all of that stuff. The trunk or the frunk on this NC means you don't have to do any of that. But it is of course one of the unique selling points for this bike, and also one of the reasons I am so convinced this is the best daily bike you can buy. So yeah, got all my shopping in, had a wonderful coffee and excellent slice of pizza with some spicy sausage. That place, man, honestly, it's usually not too busy, so I don't think it's that well known. I'll put the link in the description if you want to visit, if you're ever in Amsterdam or if you're from Holland. But yeah, highly recommend it. I'm usually pretty picky when it comes to Italian food or coffee, but this, excellent. Now it's time to head out of the city and see if this bike is still any fun on a twisty road, because all of this practical stuff is all nice and well, but at the end of the day it is still a motorcycle, and it's still should put a smile on your face. So yeah, I'm gonna head out of the city, just a small stretch of highway, and then we'll hit the Twisty road to see if it still does the motorcycle thing, which is make you smile. Alright, so once you're done with the boring stuff, all the highway riding and the commuting and the city riding, is this NC750X still any fun to ride? Well, that's why I'm on the Twisty road to answer that question. And the answer might surprise you, because I feel like this bike gets a rep for being, well, to be honest, a bit boring. And I understand where they're coming from, and I do have a really big problem with this bike, which we'll get into in a second. But to be honest, just riding it on a Twisty road like this, flick it into sport mode or into manual mode, encounter a car in the best corner on the road. Hold on, we'll see if we can do this person. Don't worry, I can see in the corner. Yeah. The chassis is really good, actually, surprisingly so. It's really confidence inspiring because the low center of gravity, it's really well balanced. It's really easy to chuck around. It feels a lot lighter than it actually is. The brakes work well, the suspension is surprisingly a bit sporty. So, flicking it into sport mode, using the pedals over here on the left switch gear, changing gears yourself, chuck it into a corner. It grips, it gives you a lot of confidence. You got wide handlebars, so you got a lot of leverage. And you punch it out of the corner using the torque. Yeah, so surprisingly fun. Oh, come on. Okay, but I do want to talk about the biggest issue I have with this motorcycle, which is sadly the engine. So I have to admit, it is very capable, very efficient, it has decent torque, but oh, it's just really dull. And although the power is sufficient and the torque is sufficient, it's just not very pleasant or satisfying to use. So the further you rev it out, it feels like the power just peters off. So I think peak torque, it feels like it's around 3000 RPM, maybe 4000 RPM, and redline is at 6500, so the dash tells me. So yeah, it's just not fun or not engaging, and it doesn't bring you really joy in any way. So the chassis is surprisingly capable, surprisingly fun. So the bike is a lot of fun to use in corners. But if you're just going on a day ride with your friends, for example, you're going at a little bit more of a relaxed pace, and you're just enjoying like the characteristics of the bikes themselves, I just feel like it's just plain, you know? And I don't think it's an entirely bad thing, because this bike is of course to be the ultimate daily motorcycle. And it fits the brief so amazingly well, but it's just, don't expect more than that with a good chassis. I think that's the only, like, and it's not even a downside. It's all personal, you know. I'm very sensitive to engines in motorcycles. I really like characterful bikes. Engine is a huge part of me, whether I like a motorcycle or not. And to a lot of people, that might not play a big of a role. So it might not be a big of a factor to you as it is to me. But I do think it's worth noting. And again, the engine isn't bad. It's just a character thing. So you can decide for yourself if that's a deal breaker or not. And as always, the sound plays a huge factor in the character of the bike. And of course, all the sound regulations are getting stricter and stricter these days. Most motorcycles might as well be electric because they're so silent out of the factory. And the sound is conflicting, because on the one hand, when you start it up and when you're just riding it around town, it has a nice, like, a little bit of a grumble to it. It's a little bit like an MT-07. But when you rev it out, it just sounds dull and a bit anemic and just not very pleasant. I would be really interested to see how this bike is transformed by a different exhaust and possibly an ECU flash, because it just feels like this bike is strangled. I know this engine has been around for a while. As I mentioned before, when we were riding in Amsterdam, the guy who I encountered on the other 750, his bike was 2016 or 2015. And that was the 750. I know they made the NC700 even before that. So this engine is getting really quite long in the tooth and quite old. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's just mainly due to the fact that this engine wasn't designed to cope with all the, what are we up to now, Euro 5 or Euro 6 regulations. And it's totally understandable, but it is a bit of a shame if you do want this to be your only bike. You know, I do feel like you're gonna miss the emotional side just a bit too much.
Alright, so I have some exciting news. I've been riding with Cardo headsets for 8 years now, maybe more. And yeah, as you can see right here, this is the Pack Talk Pro. And I'm really excited to announce that Cardo has chosen to, well, make me an official ambassador, which is pretty insane. Yeah, I've been doing this channel for half a year now or something. And yeah, I just reached out to them, told them who I am, told them what my plans are this year. And they agreed to provide me with this headset. I had the Pack Talk Edge before and always really excellent, honestly. And yeah, with this new one, you have crash detection on it. So if you crash, you enter an emergency contact beforehand. And if you crash, they get sent your location. They get a message saying, hey, this person might have had an accident. Here's the location, and they can call the emergency services. Other than that, they have the 45mm speakers now. It used to be 40, now they're 45. To be honest, I never maxed out the volume on my own old Pack Talk Edge anyway. But these are quite a bit louder. And also the clarity is a bit better. You especially notice it riding around town and country roads when the wind noise is a little bit less. When you're on the highway, you don't notice an amazing amount of difference. But when you're riding through town and stuff, yeah, there's a lot more bass and it's a lot clearer. So I'll leave you to be the judge of that, if that's worth an upgrade. I think if you are just getting into the Cardo ecosystem now, just the crash protection alone could be a very worthwhile feature. Because yeah, I ride alone a lot and I plan some pretty big holidays, especially this year. And I think it's nice that I put in my mom as my emergency contact. That if something does happen, she has my location. And if need be, if worst comes to worst, she can call the emergency services for me. So yeah, really crazy. If you do want to support me and this channel, I have a link in the description down below. If you click that, it takes you to the Cardo website. And if you use my code RIC10 at checkout, you'll get 10% off. So I get some commission on that. You support the channel, you get a nice headset and a discount. So I think everyone's happy. So yeah, let's talk about the NC for the last little bit. Now that we've had the practical stuff, we've had some of the fun stuff. I've shown you what it can do, all of the good sides. And which brings me to the conclusion. So is this the perfect daily motorcycle if you're commuting? Absolutely, honestly. There's only two real drawbacks. So first one, no cruise control, which I think is actually pretty crucial for a commuter bike, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of highway. And secondly, yeah, that engine I'm just not a big fan of. So again, I am pretty sensitive to this kind of thing, but it's not the most fun engine. Would I buy one? Well, as an only bike, probably not. I would look for something which has a bit more excitement, a bit more fun factor, a bit more character. But if you already have a fun bike and you're looking for something to do pretty much just the practical stuff with, I don't think there's any better options out there than this. You have the built-in storage, it's very economical. This engine has been around for a very long time, so you know it's reliable, it's built well, it's very easy to ride around town. So yeah, honestly, I don't know what else you could ask for a day-to-day bike. But yeah, maybe you have something like a Tuono V4 or an MT-09 or a ZX4RR alongside this, and then you have like the perfect complementary package. So I think I'll leave it at that. Please do let me know what you think of this bike. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It helps me out a lot. And thank you for gracing me with your presence and your time. I truly appreciate it. Making videos for a living is my dream right now. I'm working my hardest to make it a reality. I want to say a huge thank you to Honda Netherlands for allowing me this bike for a week. And yeah, I think that will do me. So I hope you have a very wonderful day and hopefully see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.